Learn how to create, sustain, and scale up your print-on-demand business with the latest tips, guides, and strategies to help you start selling and making money today. Welcome to the Sales on Demand Show. And here's your host, Adam Schneider.
Hi everybody, this is Adam Schneider and you're listening to the Sales on Demand Show. This is episode 51. A warm welcome on a day that is not so warm. Today, we're finishing off talking about debt, how to crush debt, how to get your finances in order, and how to make this business start generating income instead of just stressing you out because you think you're not doing so well. All right, so let's get started. Today's sponsored message is from the Low-Hanging System. This is the only online training program that I recommend for people getting into print on demand. I will be creating my own training program, but I always still and always will recommend the Low-Hanging System. There is so many different reasons to get into the Low-Hanging System, and the first one is mentorship. The Facebook page for the Low-Hanging System is a lifetime of having the top sellers on Etsy and Amazon literally tell you how to make hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, and particularly around Christmas time. And you get a lifetime membership to that Facebook group for free with the Low-Hanging System. In addition, you get a 1-year integration access to Amazon and eBay, and you also get $50 in Gear Bubble credits to get started. It only costs $297. You can visit salesondemandshow.com/LHS for more information, or click the link in the show notes. Alright, so what's happening right now? It is a insanely busy week. I'm just about to leave to go to the mountains for a work conference. We're going to learn stuff and things. It's like 5 or 6 days away from Valentine's Day, and Etsy is doing really, really well, considering the appalling lack of effort on my behalf. And I gotta tell you guys, I sometimes look at the results that I'm getting, and I'm like, I could do so much better if I actually took action to do the things that I know I need to do. But, like everybody, I get distracted. And, I did put some effort in, and all of my efforts paid off. I can't think of, and you know what, you're not going to get results like this when you first start on Etsy. But at least 70% of the products that I listed for Valentine's Day had at least one sale. And I think the rest of them had at least some favorites, which means that they could sell, and they probably will sell around Christmas time. And, I am flabbergasted by just how easy this really is. Once you learn the tricks, it is just like printing money. You make these text designs, you maybe add a graphic or two, you do some keyword research, and you just list it. So some of the things that are winning for me are designs in other languages and designs that are kind of silly and crude. So those are two things that are winning for me on Etsy for Valentine's Day. So the next thing I'm going to be working on is Mother's Day, which, thank God, is not till May. I have lots of time. Well, not as much time as I think I do, but I will begin working on that as soon as I return from the mountains and my training. So here's one last tip for Etsy, and this is something that all of the top sellers know, and a lot of people are just discovering, is that when you have something that sells decently well on Etsy, you can actually duplicate that listing. Sell the same product with a different title and different tags and maximize your sales. I did that with the one thing that was selling really well for me this year, and it doubled the number of sales I got from that one item. And I could not be more happy with that. All right, so let's get into it. So, preamble here is, I'm going to summarize this with one phrase. It is not that hard to make money. It's not that hard to make money. Okay? Everybody thinks that making money is actually pretty challenging. No, it's not. Making money is pretty easy compared to not spending money. Everybody believes that they need more cash, but making more money is not the solution. Spending less is the solution. And the reason is that the more money you make, the more you pay in taxes. And you should make more money. But you don't. The trick is to not spend that extra money. And honestly, everybody always says, well, I make a budget, I know what I spend, but very few people actually have a written budget. You need a budget. And your budget should be no more than 90% of everything you take home. So for me, it's actually fairly easy because I am the breadwinner in the house. My wife doesn't have any income, so to speak. So it kind of simplifies things for me in that, I know how much money I'm making. I have I am on top of our bank account. I have a budget. Everything is laid out. Everything is allocated for, including things that aren't a regular monthly expense, like clothes for kids or, house repairs. So what I will be doing here, and I don't know why I haven't done this yet, other than just the fact that I procrastinate like crazy, is I'm going to be taking all of the non-regular expenses, and I'm just going to be pulling that money right out immediately and putting it into my reserve cash fund. If anybody has ever done budgeting for municipal governments, you'll know that this is something that they do. Businesses do this as well. Big businesses, they take money and they put it into reserves and to replace things that they know are going to need replacement. So they put in reserves for road repair, sewage plant replacement, big things that are going to cost millions of dollars, and they're not going to want to take that out of their budget for the year. They can't just say to everybody, oh, hey, the water treatment plant kind of, it sucks. It's, instead of putting water in the pipes, it's just throwing mud in there. We're going to need to replace that. Oh, it's like $3 million. Sorry. Just pay the money, and we promise this will never happen again because these things last forever. No, they would never get away with that. People would legitimately and correctly burn down the city hall and replace every person in the council. So that 10% that you're saving, that doesn't include your reserves. You should be putting all of these things into reserves. So you're going to have two different funds. The first fund is going to be your emergency cash fund, and you're going to need at least $3,000 in there, and at the very minimum, $1,000. I mean, honestly, $1,000 is not much. It won't even buy much, but it'll get you past, a couple of weeks of the worst case scenario. It's my car broke down and it flung a tire through someone's window and I need to replace a tire. That $1,000 will cover that. But $3,000 gives you a nice big cushion. So that extra 10% of your budget, that's where that's going to go. So the next thing that you're going to put that money into is building this business. Now you can do all of this at the same time, but you should get your emergency cash sorted out first. Build the business and don't spend a lot of money on it in the beginning, right? So don't go out and send a bunch of items to FBA that you don't know if they're going to sell or not. Don't go, subscribing to a bunch of software programs like Photoshop and Bindwise or Merchant Words. You don't need any of that in the beginning. Work with the simple things that I've already taught you and start there. You're probably not going to make a ton of money in the beginning. It'll always be your worst year. Your first year is your worst year. So, but you want to build the business and you want to put cash aside for that. And right now, it's currently February. We have 10 months till Christmas. And Christmas is when you're going to spend all your money sending products to customers. So save up for that. You're going to need that money. My very first year, I was dying by the end of December because I'd spent all my money sending products to customers. And of course, Amazon, they don't give you your payouts for 3 or 4 weeks, and you got to wait for that. So even though I was had money coming, I was broke at that very moment. And you don't want to be like that, especially at Christmas time, because that's like already the most expensive time of year. If you're buying gifts for people or traveling or taking time off work, you don't want to have to be completely broke at that time, and you can start saving right now. And the third thing you're going to save for is paying down your debt. We talked about that last week. So what I also recommend, and I'm not even joking when I say this, save every penny you earn from this business. Do not spend the money you earn from this business for the first 2 years, and reinvest that money into your business, or just save it. Put that money aside. Paying off debt is also good too, because if you don't owe the money, it's kind of like you saved the money. Alternatively, if you're the kind of person that's like, I am going into this full time, I am going to make this work, what you should be aiming for is to earn 2 times what you need to live on if you were going all in full time. If you're earning 2 times what you're living on, you're doing pretty good. You're probably doing better than most employees are. All right, so the meat of this episode is 3 things that you're burning cash on. And this is, when I say that you need to be spending 90% or less of your income, everybody always says, I can't. It's easy for you to say. There's so many excuses that I've heard and seen and replied to. I follow Dave Ramsey on Facebook. This is where I've got all this information. If you follow Dave Ramsey, you probably recognize everything that I'm saying as coming straight from the mouth of the man himself. He is really the expert on getting out of debt. And I hear these excuses all the time. I'm on benefits. I'm making minimum wage. I can't save my money. I've got kids. I have to spend this. All right. No, man. Those are all excuses. And I don't accept excuses from myself, and I don't accept excuses from people in my life. Now, if you tell me this, and I'm not going to, criticize you for it, but I am going to tell you right now, all of you listening to me right here, right now, everybody has wiggle room in your budget. I don't care if you are on the tightest budget in the world. You've got some wiggle room. And it's in places and decisions that you don't want to make. These are the kinds of decisions that are hard to make. But this is what's going to get you there. All of the experts that are not Dave Ramsey, of course, they all say things like, well, if you don't buy that $5 coffee, or if they're talking about the easy ways to not save or to not spend money, and they're like, if you change your insurance plan, and those are easy decisions to make, and you should go out and look at those decisions. But they're not going to save you all that much money, because they're very small things. The things that you are really spending money on, there is 3 things that every family, every individual, every couple, there are 3 things that you're spending most of your money on. And you need to find that 10% in those things, because that's 10% that's really going to hit you. You could even do better than 10%. 10% is kind of like the minimum that you can save. So the first thing that you're burning cash on is where and how you live. So for me, this was basically, I had to decide that I'm not going to live in a city. I live in a small town. The cost of living in a small town is significantly lower than living in the city. We rent, and our rent is probably half of what you'd pay for a house of the same size. And we have a huge lot. I mean, I am extremely happy with the lifestyle we're living in this house. It is fantastic. I could not be happier about this. We're paying, like I said, we're paying maybe 60% of what you pay to rent a house in the nearest big city to us, which is about, an hour and 10 minutes away. Now, it means that if I want to work in that city, I've got to drive to get there. But 40% less money spent every month on my living expenses. The biggest living expense that I have, which is my housing, that is a huge savings. Massive savings. Now maybe you're thinking, well, you're going to spend all that money in fuel. Nope. No, sir, you will not. And that is because you are going to buy a vehicle that is not going to burn a ton of fuel. And this is point number 2. The big thing that everybody spends money on is the kind of car you drive. And this is even bigger than your housing expenses, because this is literally, there is a huge variation in the amount of money people spend on vehicle and transportation. So many of my friends, they're like, I want to buy a new car because I don't want to fix cars. And I understand that point of view. I really do. I owned a few Lemons myself. It's a pain in the butt having a vehicle that sucks. So the trick is, don't buy one of those vehicles that sucks. Not every used vehicle out there is a piece of crap. Some of them are really, really good. But you got to do some research. So don't go out there and buy that Ford Focus, the 2003 Ford Focus, or the Dodge Neon, because those cars are trash. Literally trash. Funny story. I had a coworker at my last job, and she was not happy with the vehicle she was driving, and she said to me, she was like, well, I think I'll sell my vehicle and buy a truck. And so I said, well, how much money do you still owe on it? She said, well, I bought it for $17,000 and I still owe $10,000 on it. And I said, oh, okay, so you've paid almost half of it off. And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know if you'll have any money left if you sell it. What do you own? She said, well, it's a Dodge Neon. And immediately, I said, you're not going to have any money left over. In fact, you're underwater on that vehicle. You literally bought the worst vehicle that's been made in the last 20 years, and you paid way too much for it, and it's going to be almost impossible to sell it. So I looked up the Black Book value of her Dodge Neon and found that it was maybe just a little over $3,000, and that would be generous. So, long story short, do a little research. Now, me, I just look for Corollas. I have owned, I think I've owned 3 Corollas now. I'm not sure. I just sort of collect them, kind of like, people collect hats. I collect Toyota Corollas. I also had a Honda Accord, which was, if you like sort of larger vehicles, a Honda Accord is fantastic. I also think that you do okay with some of the newer Hyundais. My wife owns a Hyundai Entourage minivan, and it has performed very well. It has very few things wrong with it, other than some weird electronic stuff. But listen, if you're going to buy a used vehicle, you got to be prepared to deal with some irritating little things, some little quirky things. But honestly, you can literally, like, every vehicle that I own, I've paid either between $2,000 and $3,000 Canadian for it. And then sometimes I'll buy new tires for it. New tires. I'll buy good quality used brand name tires, and then I'll have someone put them on, and that's it. And then I drive the thing until literally it falls apart. So, I don't know, maybe you don't want to drive a vehicle till it falls apart, but you can save so much money. I mean, think about the difference between buying a brand new car for $17,000. You're going to be paying payments of like $200 a month on that vehicle, and you're paying those for 6 years at least. Now think about this. Spend the next 3 years putting aside $200 a month. Then go and buy yourself a car with that, whatever it is that I can't do the math right now, so that's about $2,400 you could save for 1 year and have $2,400. And that would buy you a very decent used Toyota Corolla. Safe car, high, very good on insurance. And don't go with the comprehensive insurance. Why would you do that? You got a $2,000 car. Are you going to ask them to fix it if it gets into an accident? No, that's stupid. So this is probably the biggest way to find that 10% right here, because I will admit that it's hard to move. If you're going to try and save that couple $100s a month on where you live, it's hard to do that unless you actually are moving, and then you do it when you're looking for a place. You just find something that's a little bit cheaper than what you can afford, and then take the extra money and save it. But the kind of car you drive, and whether or not you take out a loan for it, and all that stuff, that is a huge impact. In fact, it's probably the biggest thing that you can do to find that 10%. So the last thing that you can do to find that 10% that you're going to save and use to invest in your business is food. And I'm not just talking about your groceries, because, a lot of people do budget their groceries, but then they go and eat out. I have some coworkers that eat out all the time, and I'm like, they're like, oh, do you want to go to Dairy Queen? And I'm like, no, I brought lunch. And they're like, come on. I'm like, no, I brought lunch, and I'm going to eat my lunch. It's a good, healthy lunch, and it saves me money to make my own food and bring it. So I make my own coffee, and I bring it with me to work. I make my own lunch, and I bring it with me to work. Every week, I allocate one day that I'm allowed to go out and buy my lunch, and that's in my budget. And I've looked through my, hundreds of months worth of expenses, and it doesn't make a huge difference for me to go out and eat out once in a while, as long as I'm eating somewhere that's not that expensive, such as Subway or Tim Hortons, which you Americans don't have. But I also bring my own water in a water bottle, because water is more expensive than gasoline when you buy it in bottles, and it's crazy. Putting aside the idea, the fact that all of these empty bottles, they just add up. Bringing your own water bottle ensures that you get something good to drink, and you're not spending a lot of money on it. So that's food. Also, where you shop for your groceries makes a huge difference. If I shop at my local grocery store here, I'm almost guaranteed to pay 30 to 40% more for the same items than I am if I go to Costco, which I hate, or we have a store called Superstore, and it's kind of like Costco, but not as crazy. It's a big grocery store, and you can buy a lot of items in bulk for very cheap. So we buy like hamburger and chicken in huge packages, bring them home, split them up, put them in the freezer, done. And then we cook, bulk food. We'll make a lasagna, and then I'll split it up into 3 or 4 containers, and that's my lunch for 3 or 4 days right there. I just throw the hot sauce on top, put the lid on, freezer. Sometimes I forget about it, and it ends up getting freezer burned, but hey, that's life. So here is a bonus for you guys, and I know that some of you are not going to be happy about this, what I'm going to tell you, but some of you are burning so much money on your pets that it is crazy. You're literally burning money on your pets. Now, I'm a very practical person, and so I prefer living human beings to animals. I do have pets. I have 2 cats. 2 cats is our quota of animals. We have, like, cats, and I think we have a couple of betta fish, and that's it. Now, I know a lot of people out there, they love dogs. I like dogs. I appreciate the fact that they exist. But again, I am not willing to go out and adopt a dog because they cost so much money. I have a person that I know, I'm not going to tell you their name or anything, but they have pets. And this is a person that I respect and I appreciate. They're a good friend of mine. But they had 2 dogs, now they have 3. And one of their dogs had their dog's kneecaps kind of blew out, which I didn't know could happen. And they took him to the vet, and it was $5,000. Which, if you've ever bought a used car, you can buy a decent used car for $5,000. You could buy 2 of the car that I'm driving now for $5,000. And this is just for the dog's knees. Now, I understand when you're faced with this bill, it's like you feel like I own this dog now. I'm compelled to pay it. Okay? Now, what I'm talking about is making good decisions beforehand. So, you know that animals are going to cost tons of money. Why do you need 5 of them? Do you need 3 dogs? Do you need those 3 dogs? I mean, I love kids, but I only have 2 because they are expensive and I can pay for 2 kids. Plus, you get a whole bunch of, like, tax breaks when you have actual humans that you're raising. Plus, they tend to live a long time. Most humans tend to live like 70 to 80 years, whereas most pets live not very long. I think if you can get a cat to live to 18, that's an old cat. And dogs live even less. I mean, some dogs live like 4 years. So you're literally repeating this process over and over again. When the dog or the cat gets old, you're spending a whole bunch of money on it to take care of it in its old age. Then it dies, and then you get a new one. And repeat the process over and over again. That is literally insanity. You should never have a pet if you're in debt. Now, if you live alone and you have no debt and you have a little bit of extra money and you're like, well, I'm putting aside money for, my dog's future expenses, or I got a dog that, is proven to not have a bunch of problems, well, you're probably fine. But if you're in debt and you have 5 dogs, you're making bad decisions. That's all I'm going to tell you. All right? I understand the companionship thing. But you're making bad decisions. You're going to suffer for that. So, that's it, guys. I'm off to the mountains, and I wish you guys the best. I will be back next week. We're going to be talking about Etsy. I have learned some things on Etsy, and I really am very excited to share those things with you guys. We're going to really get deep into how to maximize your Etsy sales. I think this year I'm going to go a little harder on Etsy than I did last year. Etsy's always been that thing that I know is so easy, and yet it's kind of tedious to work it because you actually have to work it. Amazon is like you click the button and forget about it. And to me, I love that. But, Amazon, yeah, it's not very predictable. It's hard to predict how you're going to do on Amazon. And Etsy, on the other hand, I mean, that is a great platform. And if you haven't started already selling, start on Etsy. Alright guys, thanks for listening. This was episode 51, and my name is Adam. We'll see you next week. Cheers.